Good day, folks. I'm Chris Burkhardt, president and founder of Placers. We are a staffing firm. We help people find jobs, and we help businesses that are trying to use contractors and freelancers. It's the way. This is our How We Solve Problems series. I'm here with Brian Saleo. Brian Saleo, welcome.
Thank you, Chris. How are you today?
Terrific. I like doing this with you. I proclaimed you our solution czar. I hope you don't mind. We've had a lot of fun over the last few months of just sort of listening to our employees, our prospects, our customers, and we're trying to almost tackle the theme du jour, if you will, what's on people's mind, and how can we, in 5, 10, 15 minutes of audio and video, help get people some information that adds value to what we do. So one of the things we've seen kind of a theme from customers, from people we talk to, that it seems as if the idea of changes in wages, wage inflation, people needing to raise pay rates or give sign-ons and all this stuff, there's just a whole lot of wage stuff going on. Mm-hmm. I know you've done your homework. I'm going to let you take it from there. What have you found, and how does this relate to our audience?
Well, thank you, Chris. And it's an interesting time. We're sort of working our way out of a pandemic, but this sort of recovery from the latest recession is much different than anyone we've ever experienced, largely because of the pandemic. Wages wise, I mean, it's crazy when you go into a restaurant, you see signs for hiring waitresses for $15, $16 an hour plus tips, where they used to make $2 or $3. The sign-on bonuses, the increases that you hear about from Amazon and Target and Walmart and McDonald's and all these different companies. So
makes it hard for a small employer to even figure out what to do.
Yeah, and just from my reading on it, it's very much a supply and demand thing. So, we're coming out of this recession, and typically when you recover from a recession, businesses kind of grow gradually. So they don't ramp up super quick. They don't go on hiring blitzes or anything like that. But we're in a time where we're recovering from a recession at the same time as the in-person workforce is now fully coming back, and both things are hitting the market at the same time. And the result is a significant shortage in labor, and the market having to therefore overpay. I mean, I don't want to make a judgment on that, but paying a lot more than they were pre-pandemic. And it's a really interesting time.
So that's, they call that, like, I think the elasticity of salaries. Is that forever now, or does that eventually self-adjust?
So, again, that's an interesting question. I think in a lot of these cases, talking to customers, one of the concerns they have is, hey, so if I have to pay $17, $18 an hour for entry-level warehouse positions where I used to pay $13, $14, that's going to set that bar for moving forward. It's pretty hard to take money away from people. So how do you do that? And some are doing it by bonuses instead of increasing hourly rates, because bonuses can go away. Some are doing other incentives. But I think what we're seeing here is, you've had minimum wage below $8 for quite a while. You hear a lot of talk about raising it over the next few years up to maybe $15 an hour. I think Delaware's in the process of either doing that or considering it.
I don't know if you saw it, but Biden announced just, I guess, the end of last week, where the administration is looking at raising it to 15 for federal contracts.
Correct.
Not federal employees, but if you have a federal contract, and that could start as early as January.
Yeah. So I almost feel like the recovery from the recession and the pandemic has kind of forced a market correction when it comes to wages. Now, what's unfortunately going to result from that is higher consumer costs, increased inflation, Some of those things were already happening due to different shortages in the supply chain, in the economy in general. But I think what you're going to start seeing is these higher wages that employers are going to have to pay probably aren't going anywhere. And on top of that, in order to make up for it, they're going to have to increase their prices.
Which almost is a perpetual cycle. You have people making more money. You hope they spend more money. I guess, do you feel, and again, I don't think I know the answer to this question, and it's dangerous to ask this. Do you feel that inflation is starting to raise salaries? That, I guess they call it reflation, where it's short term and reactionary. Do you think that is it is that the dog or the tail? You know, what's driving what?
So I don't profess to be an economist, but my take on it is that inflation is going to increase due to the higher costs employers are facing right now.
It seems to make common sense. So this is also, I read a bit that the idea of companies doing kind of a cost of living approach. I've read that there's a lot going on with that kind of thinking. What's your take on it?
So I guess cost of living now is something that everybody's kind of questioning. You know, costs are going up, gas prices are higher, all these different things, your cost of living also goes up. So I think that's part of the pressure that employees and the job market are putting on employers to say, hey, you know, labor's tight. I know I have some bargaining power here, and my cost of living isn't what it was 6 months ago or a year ago or wherever you want to look at. So therefore, I need to make more money, or frankly, I'll just stay home and I'll avoid the risk of infection that some people are still dealing with, or I'll take care of my kids or elderly family members for a little bit longer. I'll collect the extra $300 from employment, which is still in place in some places. And if you make $19 an hour or less, you make more on unemployment in those areas right now than you do going to work.
It's really excellent input, sort of framing maybe the next level of that dialogue. I think for the last 20 years, companies have looked at a cost of living increase maybe in the very broad range, but 1% to 6% range.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I saw, one of the big four accounting firms. So let's face it, high dollar labor, consultants, CPAs, you know, all those, you know, your highly degreed experts, they're looking at a 6 to 8% cost of living increase. My sense, I guess, I'm not sure if I have a question, but it's just a statement to get your reaction to it. It seems as if it was being done in reaction to inflation, but also to lock down talent.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Are you seeing proactive raises across the board to lock down talent?
Yeah. I mean, the people in the job market, or even not in the job market, people are leaving jobs at a higher rate than ever before. So I definitely think, yeah. So employers are kind of, in some cases, being proactive and trying to lock down some people. I know just in my experience with our company, you know, we look at salaries all the time. And one of the factors that we have to consider is people might be able to go someplace else and make more money. And if they're a valuable asset to your company, you don't want to lose them.
So there's this concept that floats around there that, hey, you have a great company if you just have a bunch of A players, you know,
Right.
You know, you don't want B and C players to follow the alphabet. You want A players. You want those that want, you know, want to move up, that want more responsibility, that want career progression. Any advice to a company that wants to either attract or keep A players relative to wages?
I think just being sensitive to it and being aware of what's going on in the market. Know that companies do have the ability, given how tight the market is, and it goes from the lowest level positions all the way up to the C-suite in terms of how the job market is right now. You have to identify your key players and make sure that you're treating them fairly, from a compensation standpoint, from benefits, work-life balance, all those different things. I'm proud to say that at Placers, I think we take care of our employees. You make sure that as an employee, I'm taken care of better than any employer I've ever been associated with. So for us, we look at most of our company as being, people we want to hang on to. We want to compensate them fairly. And so be aware of what is going on in the job market, what your competition is paying, and making sure that you're staying ahead of that curve for the people that you have to have as key contributors in your company.
Brian, I was on a talk radio this morning, and one of the sound bites was that now that there's this work from home phenomenon, and this is related to wages, but bear with me a second, that now that everybody is thinking about this remote work type stuff, that all of a sudden, many jobs all of a sudden are now national searches.
Yes.
And it got me thinking that that's going to have an impact on wages.
Right. I actually was following an article and its comments on that point. Is you got a few things that are going on kind of, in the mid 2020 century, whatever you call that. You've got more automation coming as we speak. You've got more people entering the workforce with a college degree than we had 20 years ago. And then you've got, for the first time ever, the labor market, the actual number of people available to work is going to start going down because the baby boomers are all going to start retiring. So you're going to see a contraction of the labor market just because of those factors. And that's also going to impact wages.
So certainly during the pandemic, many people that were kind of on the bubble did retire a few years early because of the duress and fear and safety and, hey, just why not? Life's too short. It's a really interesting thing. Everybody's been talking about this concept of the war for talent, and it's had different chapters, but it seems, what we're really talking about is that the factors make it much more significant today.
Yeah.
It's more severe. It was a gradual kind of thing. Just a weird question. We're going to come up on Labor Day in a couple of weeks. There's a lot of federal stuff that's going to go away. Supply and demand. Does this get easier for employers in the fall, or is it just more of the same? Tough question.
So I'm glad you asked that. Read some things on that as well. So just to give you a few kind of fun facts, Q2, we had the largest annualized pay increases in 35 years in the country, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So typically, your annualized pay increases are going to be somewhere around 2%. It was 6% on average for Q2. Which is incredible, 2 to 3 times what the normal rate would be. What I've read is that Q4 is going to see quite a few of the things that may have still been impacting the labor shortage starting to ease. So kids are going to be going back. Kids are going to be going back to school. Risks of infection are going to continue to go down, hopefully. You're going to see the unemployment benefits cut back to where they typically are, as opposed to the extra that's been provided. And I think employers are going to start requiring people to come back into work, into the office or whatever the workplace might be. So as you see that, I think things in Q4 are really going to start to normalize. And from what I've read, that's expected to continue into Q22, where we have, 2022, Q22, something I just invented.
Room 222 was a show in the 70s, Brian.
Thanks for letting me know, Grandpa.
I'll have to. I think it was on after Sanford and Son. Just putting that out there.
Okay. So 2022 looks like a period of continued growth and a little bit more of a balanced time frame in terms of the labor market and what employers are paying. And then 2023, we start contracting a little bit again. So the one article I read
couldn't get any more out of balance than it is this year.
Yeah. So, everybody kind of seems to recognize now that we were going into a recession pre-pandemic, and then the pandemic kind of made it worse. They say that the typical recovery time from a pandemic is 4 to 7 years. This one, we started coming back about 2 years afterwards because there was so much going on with the pandemic of people returning to work when they were out of work, the unemployment rate skyrocketing and now slowly coming back down. They expect the unemployment rates to continue to go down and get back to the normal rates that they typically would be probably in like 2023, where it'll be back below 5% again, maybe even 4%. So
I'll be curious. This is sort of like a game we'll play, and maybe we'll see if we guess right in one of our next shows. In June, there were 850,000 jobs created.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to put a number out there to the public on July, think that goes up or down? Tough one. It isn't an easy one.
Yeah, I think it's going to go down. I think things are going to soften a little bit. I think we're, it's like you've been locked up in the house for a long period of time, and now all of a sudden you get outside and you want to do everything. I feel like the labor market's acting the same way. Like, things have been contracting, and then boom, we all saw people coming back to work and the world coming back to life. I think that's going to continue, and I do think, as automation's happening fast, different types of jobs are no longer done by human beings. I go to the grocery store now and I don't have to talk to a human being to check out. I see CVS, I go there and I can do self-checkout there. So it's just a really different time. So I if I put on my sorcerer's hat, I would say that I think it's going to contract a little bit.
Your Kreskin hat?
Yes.
Another 70s reference. Wow, I am old. I think that
I was thinking Karnak.
Oh, Karnak. That's right. That's who
Yes.
it is. So I think you're right. I think the disruptions, the supply chain stuff have had an impact this last month, and just the fact that people, I think, have started to slow down their job search process because of the nature of summer and kids still being home. And so, all right, should give this back to you a little bit. Anything else in your research that you'd like to share about this topic of wage and wage inflation and where things are headed?
So another all-time high, according to the National Foundation of Independent Businesses, 48% of businesses surveyed said they have open jobs that they can't fill. Again, historically unprecedented. So the job market, what we're feeling in terms of, how Q2 unfolded in terms of trying to find people, we weren't imagining it. It was real. And we've had to continue to adjust and figure out new ways to find people, more networking, promote our jobs differently and better, all those different kinds of things. I think the biggest takeaway that I would reemphasize is, take care of your employees, make sure that you're creating a workplace that makes them want to stay with you. I think we do that very well. I was just talking to somebody who lost her job during the pandemic. and she's now back to work for a new company. And she said, Brian, I love this company and I will never leave here because they treat me like I'm a member of their family. And they're a big billion-dollar company, but they treat me like I'm part of the family. And you can't find that everywhere anymore. And that means more to me than my hourly rate or how much time I have off or things like that. So,
what's interesting, Brian, unless you've ever experienced that, you don't even know that should be on your list of what you could have from an employer.
Yeah. So it's funny. When I used to interview people more often than I do now, I would always ask them, what are their top 3 things to them in their job search? What 3 things would they say are most important to them in finding their next job? It fascinated me how often salary was not in the top 3. You know, they talk about benefits, they talk about work-life balance, they talk about opportunities for growth and advancement, you know, all those different things. Salary did not play into it nearly as often as I would have thought. And I think, I mean, that was 10 years ago when I was recruiting actively every day. I'm sure if I were to ask those same questions of people today, I bet even less people would look at salary. Yet here we are talking about how people are making so much more money than they were 2 years ago because that's what the labor market has dictated. I think it's fascinating.
That's incredibly relevant. That shift has made, and let's just call it as it is, if we represent the workforce, if we're their agent, you darn well better take advantage of this shift. That's okay. You're responsible for your own career. If there's inflation, getting more is appropriate so your dollar spends the same way. But I mean, it's ironic. I don't see any problem with this. I don't think that employers want to own careers anymore. Not many. We're blessed to have a few customers that believe in that still. That's certainly rare today. So we got to help the workforce do things right. I think you were hinting at that. Don't just go for another dollar. Other things matter, but you can get a sense of the feeding frenzy.
Yeah. You know, sometimes it's so easy to think that the grass is going to be greener. You really have to evaluate that if you're somebody considering changing jobs. And like I said, more people are considering changing jobs right now than they have for a very long time. But I know quite a few people who have changed jobs and got burnt that, you know, they realized they made the wrong decision. So
I just was consulting with a family member who left a job for $3-4 more than their previous job, and is at odds with their boss.
Yeah.
So what's that like? You know, you leave something where you kind of liked it, but wow, I got this shot to make, well, you know, another $200 a week, and now she is questioning whether or not it's worth it.
You know, as an employee, take stock of what you have. Make sure that if you're making a change, it's for the right reasons and for something better. If you aren't getting what you feel you should get or being treated the way you should be, speak up, because employers do want to hear that feedback by and large. And as an employer, make sure you're taking care of your people and listening to them. It's like any relationship. You know, it's what you invest in it is what you're going to get back out of it.
Well, Brian, I think this topic was timely. I think it's applicable to if you're a job seeker and you're listening. I think it's applicable if you're in a hiring situation. And I imagine that as we get into the fall, it's a topic that we might want to do kind of a sequel on. And once again, folks, this is our Problems We Solve series. We'll make sure that you have emails and/or phone numbers to get Brian or I your ideas. We frankly are always looking for them. And until next time, Brian.
Great talking to you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.